If your great-grandparents had made one different decision about money, you might not be working a single day of your adult life, not because they were rich, but because they chose to think about money in a way almost nobody else did. This is the story of a mindset shift so powerful, it quietly built dynasties. While the rest of the world lived paycheck to paycheck, and the same shift is still available to you right now. Welcome to Hidden Finance, where we uncover the stories behind money, power, and the hidden decisions that shape your financial life today. In this episode, we are going back in time to watch one idea about wealth echo across generations. We'll see how it turned ordinary workers into lasting dynasties, and how it can change the way you see every dollar in your hand. Because the greatest inheritance is not a trust fund. It's a way of thinking, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. To understand this mindset shift, we need to step back, far back. For most of human history, wealth meant one thing: land. Kings, lords, emperors, their power came from acres and armies, not from bank accounts. If you were born poor, you stayed poor because you did not own land, you worked on it. Wealth was physical, visible, hard to move, and even harder to access. Then something quietly revolutionary appeared: paper wealth. In the 1600s and 1700s, as global trade exploded, merchants needed money to build ships, finance voyages, and spread risk. So they created something new: shares in companies, like the Dutch East India Company and the British East India Company. For the first time in history, you could own a piece of a business instead of a farm or a field. This was the birth of modern capital markets, and with them, a new kind of wealth, invisible but incredibly powerful. But here's the crucial part: most people didn't change how they thought about money. Sailors, dock workers, shopkeepers, they still saw money as something you earned and spent, a day's work for a day's pay. Only a tiny minority adopted a different mental model: money as something you own and grow. They saw each coin not as a reward, but as a seed. That was the mindset shift. From how do I make more money, to what can I own that will make money for me, from income to assets, from short-term comfort to long-term control. And that quiet shift is what built generational wealth. Let's make this real. Imagine two young immigrants arriving in New York City in 1900. They step off the same ship, speak broken English, and find jobs in the same factory, earning the same low wage. They are both poor, but over a century, their families will live completely different financial lives because of how each man thinks about his paycheck. The first man, let's call him Antonio, lives the way almost everyone around him does. He works long days, sends some money back home, and spends the rest on rent, food, and the little comforts that make life bearable. When he gets a raise, he moves to a slightly better apartment, buys nicer clothes, eats better food. He's not reckless, he's not irresponsible. But to Antonio, money is for survival first, and then for enjoyment. The second man, we'll call him Marco, starts with the same wage, the same hunger, the same cramped room. But he stumbles into a conversation with an older shopkeeper who says something that shocks him: "Don't just work in the city, kid. Own a piece of it." The shopkeeper explains rents are rising, property values are creeping higher, and people will always need a place to live. Marco begins to see his coins differently. For the next decade, Marco lives like he is still broke, even when he's not. He shares a small room instead of upgrading. He avoids debt. He delays the finer suits and fancier meals. Every spare dollar he can scrape together goes into one thing: a down payment on a tiny, beat-up building in a poor neighborhood. He doesn't buy a better life in the present. He buys a tiny piece of the future. His friends think he's crazy. Decades later, Antonio retires with some savings, maybe a small pension, and a lifetime of hard work behind him. He has enough to survive, but not enough to reshape his family's destiny. His children start where he ended, back at zero, needing their own paychecks to live. The story resets every generation: work, earn, spend, repeat. Marco's story is different. His first building pays rent. That rent doesn't just cover costs, it funds the next building and then the next. When inflation rises, so do rents and property values. His debt shrinks in real terms while his assets grow. By the time he retires, the buildings he starved himself to buy are feeding him. His children don't start at zero. They inherit not only buildings, but a structure, legal ownership, habits, and a story about how their father thought. Some of them train as lawyers, some as managers, some as tradesmen, all orbiting the family assets. Within a century, what began as a laborer's wage becomes a small empire of apartments and shops. Not magic, not luck, a mindset. Now zoom out. Marco's story is a micro version of what many real families did across history. Think of the Rockefellers, who turned one man's obsession with saving and reinvesting into a fortune that still shapes universities, foundations, and finance today. Or the Rothschilds, who used information, discipline, and long-term lending to European governments to build one of the most powerful banking dynasties in history. In every case, the core move was the same: shift from working for money to making money work for them. This is where the timeline of financial history and human psychology collide. As the 19th and 20th centuries unfolded, capitalism matured. Railroads, oil, steel, electricity, and later technology created massive profits for those who owned the companies, not for those who merely worked at them. Between 1926 and today, U.S. stocks have returned, on average, around 9 to 10% per year before inflation. That meant one simple, boring thing: money left alone in productive assets doubled roughly every 7 to 10 years. But most people never let their money sit long enough. They traded, they speculated, they chased rumors and hot tips. Or they didn't invest at all, because their mindset said investing is for the rich, not for people like me. Meanwhile, a quiet minority lived below their means, bought shares in solid companies, or bought land, and waited. They didn't need secrets, they needed patience. Then came the brutal test of this mindset: crisis. The Great Depression of the 1930s wiped out banks, businesses, and fortunes. Stock prices crashed nearly 90% from their highs. Unemployment soared, fear ruled the streets and the headlines. Many who had dabbled in markets swore never to touch them again. Their mindset retreated to pure survival: get a job, get cash, avoid risk. But some people, very few, saw something different. To them, collapsing prices weren't just destruction, they were opportunity. If the world wasn't ending, then strong companies were temporarily on sale. They kept buying, even when it felt insane, because their mental model said, "I'm not buying a stock quote. I'm buying a piece of a business for decades." That same pattern repeated in World War II, the oil shocks of the 1970s, the crash of 1987, the dot-com bust of 2000, the financial crisis of 2008, and the pandemic crash of 2020. Panic creates sellers. A long-term ownership mindset creates buyers. History shows that, over and over, the buyers in those moments ended up owning far more of the future than they ever could by timing the easy years. But buying in those moments only feels possible. Your mindset is already different before the crisis hits. By the late 20th century, something astonishing happened. The tools that once only kings, bankers, and tycoons had started to become available to ordinary workers. Pension funds, mutual funds, then index funds, and finally 401ks and online brokerages opened the gates. You no longer needed to be Rockefeller to own pieces of hundreds of companies across the world. In theory, generational wealth became more democratic, yet the results tell a sobering story. In the United States, the top 10% of households own roughly 80 to 90% of the stock market's value. The bottom half of households own almost none. Same system, same markets, wildly different outcomes. The biggest difference isn't raw opportunity, it's mindset. One group treats money as a flow. It comes in, it goes out. Better income simply means better lifestyle, nicer car, bigger house, more subscriptions. The other group treats money as a builder of machines. Income is the raw material. Assets are the machines. Cash flow is the output. They delay some pleasure today so that, one day, their assets can pay for all of it. This is the mindset shift that can transform you today. Stop asking, how much can I buy with this? Start asking, what can I own with this? That will pay me for years. Stop seeing every dollar as a reward for your labor. Start seeing every dollar as a tiny employee that can go out into the world and work for you. You don't need to be a landlord in 1900 or a banker in 1800 to apply this. You can use modern tools, index funds, diversified ETFs, retirement accounts, even fractional share investing to become an owner. You can buy slivers of thousands of companies around the world, often with a few taps on your phone. The technology has never been more powerful. But the temptation to think short-term has never been stronger either. The apps are built to make you trade, not to make you own. So here is the uncomfortable truth hidden in plain sight. Most people are not kept from generational wealth by lack of access anymore. They are held back by a mindset trained to seek excitement, not endurance. We want the feeling of winning today instead of the quiet victory of compounding over years. We chase lottery tickets instead of building engines. Think of the stories we tell. We glorify the overnight crypto millionaire, the meme stock gambler, the founder who went from garage to billionaire in 5 years. But the real dynasties, the families whose names survive on buildings, endowments, and businesses, were usually built slowly, quietly over decades. Year after year, they made the same boring choice. Own more assets, spend less than they could. Pass on not just money, but the playbook. You can start writing that playbook in your own life, even if you're starting from nothing. It begins with a brutally honest question. If I keep doing with my money what I'm doing now, where will that lead in 20 or 30 years? If the answer is exactly where I am, just older, then it's time to make the same mindset shift our historical wealth builders did. Carve out a percentage, however small, that is non-negotiably reserved for ownership. Not for a vacation, not for a gadget, for assets. That might be stocks in broad, low-cost index funds. It might be slowly building towards a rental property. It might be buying into a simple, understandable business, or even building one yourself. The form is flexible, the mindset is not. And if you have children, remember, the most powerful thing you can leave them isn't just money. It's a story. Tell them how you chose to see money not as a toy or a trophy, but as a tool. Show them that every crisis is both danger and opportunity, depending on whether you're a desperate seller or a prepared owner. Teach them that wealth isn't about looking rich, it's about owning things that quietly make you rich over time. That story, told early and often, is how generational wealth actually survives. In the end, the difference between the family that resets to zero every generation and the family that climbs, step by step, to security and freedom is not just luck or talent or timing. It is one mental decision repeated over a lifetime. I will not just work in this system. I will own a piece of it. That decision built empires in the past. It can quietly transform your future today. This is Hidden Finance, where we uncover the unseen choices that create visible fortunes and reveal the quiet strategies that separate those who only earn from those who truly own. If this story changed how you see your next dollar, imagine what happens when you apply it for the next decade. Subscribe, follow, and join us on Hidden Finance as we keep pulling back the curtain on the money truths history tried to whisper. And most people still don't hear, because the real secret of generational wealth was never a secret at all. It was a mindset hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone like you to claim it.